The tension in Dr. Leonard Markham's advanced calculus class crackled like static electricity, the kind that warned of an impending storm. Barron Trump, seated in his usual spot at the back, glanced at the whiteboard where an unusual message had been written. Today's topic: redefining academic priorities. He shifted slightly in his seat, intrigued but keenly aware that the discussion would likely veer into contentious territory. As Dr. Markham began her lecture, she paced like a lioness stalking her prey. "Mathematics," she proclaimed with fervor, "is vital, but we must prioritize discussions that address social injustice." Her voice echoed across the room, sending ripples of discomfort through the students, who had come to learn calculus, not engage in a political debate. Barron raised his hand slowly, his posture calm yet assertive, as if he were preparing to defuse a tense situation. "Professor Markham," he said, his voice steady, "I think we need to remember why we are enrolled in this advanced class. Many of us are passionate about mathematics and want to delve into its complexities, not just the application of abstract theories." A few students shifted uneasily, their eyes darting between Barron and Dr. Markham. He felt a mix of nervousness and determination, but he stood firm. He could sense others in the room felt the same dissatisfaction, but few were willing to voice their thoughts against the professor's authority. "Ah, Mr. Trump," Dr. Markham replied with an edge of condescension, eyes narrowing. "Isn't it easy to speak about passion when your background affords you opportunities that most can only dream of? Maybe you should consider the privilege that has led you to this point." The words struck Barron like a thunderbolt. The room fell into an eerie silence as whispers spread about whether she was intentionally targeting him or simply venting her frustrations. He remained composed, his expression kind yet firm. "I do recognize that privilege plays a role in education, Professor. But shouldn't our job in this classroom be to elevate everyone's understanding of mathematics, regardless of background?" Dr. Markham turned away, visibly rattled by the unexpected challenge. "Well, since you're so confident, let's put your knowledge to the test," she said, a smirk flickering across her face. With swift movements, she wrote a complex multivariable calculus problem on the whiteboard that she had intentionally chosen as a trap. This was the kind of problem that would stump even the brightest minds, layers of complexity woven together like a mathematical tapestry. "Let's see how you handle this, Barron," she taunted, her eyes glittering with a mix of challenge and condescension. The tension thickened as Barron stood up, an aura of quiet determination surrounding him. "Of course, Professor. I'd be happy to try." He made his way to the front. The room was a pin-drop silent, and students leaned forward in their seats, not just out of curiosity, but a blend of hope and anxiety. "Let's see if Mr. Trump can actually demonstrate his supposed understanding of calculus." Dr. Markham crossed her arms, reveling in the anticipation of the moment which she believed would shatter any semblance of his confidence. But as Barron took the marker, a calm smile pierced his composed facade. "Before I begin," he said, "this problem has multiple approaches. Would you prefer the traditional method or an innovative technique I've learned?" His casual mention of techniques rattled Dr. Markham. It was clear he was no ordinary student. "Just start," she snapped, but her tone was less authoritative now, showing vulnerability as Barron approached the whiteboard. "All right," he said, turning to his classmates. "Let me explain each step as I go. Mathematics should be a shared journey, not a solitary battle." As his marker brushed against the whiteboard, the first lines of his solution began to emerge like an artist revealing a masterpiece. He spoke calmly, explaining the history of the methods he employed. The atmosphere in the lecture hall shifted, attention fully focused on the unexpected lecture unfolding before them. He made connections between the current problem and foundational principles that leaped decades back to the works of great mathematicians. However, Dr. Markham felt her earlier confidence slipping. As Barron broke down the complexities of calculus with grace, she wrestled with a storm of emotions: frustration, embarrassment, disbelief. How dare he turn her challenge into an educational experience that shone such a glaring light on her previous dismissive attitude? Barron paused and turned back to her, breaking the tension. "Professor, there are multiple ways to tackle this problem. Perhaps we could explore a collaborative solution? I believe that different perspectives can enrich our understanding." The question hung in the air like a loaded gun, daring her to accept or reject. Just then, from the back of the room, a voice piped up. "Can we see both methods?" asked Sarah Chen, her eyes wide as if she had just uncovered something profound. This is actually helping me grasp the concepts better. Before Dr. Markham could respond, the door burst open. Dean Richardson, a supporter of the professor's controversial views, stepped inside the room with an urgency that cut through the tension. "Leonard, we need you for an emergency faculty meeting regarding curriculum changes." The timing was all too convenient, and everyone sensed that Dean Richardson's entrance was not a mere coincidence but a desperate attempt to pull Dr. Markham from the spotlight of spiraling events. Barron turned to the dean, undeterred. "With all due respect, sir, I believe the discussion must continue. Professor Markham challenged me publicly, and it's crucial that we honor that challenge." "Challenge?" The dean's brow furrowed. "Listen, young man." "No," Barron interjected, raising his voice slightly and gaining the fierce attention of the students. "What's at stake here is bigger than authority. It's about integrity and the opportunity for education to transcend our biases." The room was an electric mix of uncertainty and adrenaline. Students exchanged confused glances, unsure of how this confrontation would end. Barron's voice remained steady, a calming influence amidst the chaos. "This is a moment of truth," Barron continued, his gaze unwavering. "If we allow politics to stand in the way of education, then we all lose." Dr. Markham stood frozen, panic washing over her as the truth of Barron's words settled in. The weight of the room's expectations bore down on her. Students wanted to learn, not fight over ideologies. As the moment spiraled, she felt an odd mix of fear and respect for the young man standing before her. The challenge she had set to humiliate a student had backfired, and now the tides of authority were swirling in a way that could reshape everything she had held dear about her teaching philosophy. As Barron stood there, poised to write the next step in the solution, the rest of the class leaned forward, eager and invested. What would Dr. Markham say? What decision would she take? "Are you going to walk away before owning your challenge?" Barron pressed, a hint of warmth in his tone, inviting her back into the conversation rather than berating her for her previous missteps. Just then, the energy in the room shifted one more time, igniting a spark of hope in the air. Would Dr. Markham rise to the occasion, or would she let personal pride drive her from the classroom? The answer that hung in the balance promised to change everything. For Barron, for Dr. Markham, and for the future of education itself. The room held its breath, caught in a tense silence as Barron stood at the whiteboard, marker poised in hand. His challenge to Dr. Markham echoed in the air, a palpable tension holding everyone captive. "Are you going to walk away before owning your challenge?" he had asked, his warm tone inviting but resolute. Dr. Markham felt her heart race, the reality of the university's expectations bearing down on her. A conflict loomed before her, a moment that could either shatter her authority or redefine it. The students watched with wide eyes, anticipation brimming in the atmosphere. Staring at the complex calculus problem she had written, Dr. Markham felt an unfamiliar vulnerability wash over her. She had intended to trap Barron, to reassert her control over the classroom. Instead, she found herself in a position that demanded more than just mathematical prowess, it demanded integrity. Taking a deep breath, Dr. Markham cleared her throat. "All right, let's proceed." The room reacted with a collective gasp, surprised by her willingness to take on Barron's challenge. Barron stepped aside as she approached the board, the eyes of her students like laser beams focused on her every move. Dr. Markham took the marker, feeling the weight of the moment. The smooth surface of the whiteboard confronted her with the same problem she had set for Barron. It felt like looking into a mirror that reflected both her intentions and her flaws. "Let's solve this together," she started, her voice steady. "But I also want to explain why I chose this problem." As she began to write, she explained her reasoning, highlighting the importance of challenging assumptions in the academic world while still engaging with the material. As Barron watched, relief washed over him. This was the first step he had hoped she would take, the willingness to engage, to foster discussions that transcended personal beliefs. The atmosphere in the room morphed from one of intimidation to one of collaboration. Dr. Markham was not just a professor trying to reclaim authority. She was a leader willing to learn. "Now," she said, breaking down the problem into simpler components, "this requires the integration of multiple variables. The elegance of calculus lies in its ability to simplify the complex." She glanced back at Barron, inviting him to respond if he wished. Barron nodded, his eyes sparkling with encouragement. That's right, Professor. And each method we can explore offers insight not just into mathematics, but into how we approach problems in general. His voice resounded through the class, rekindling excitement. As Dr. Markham continued writing her solution, Barron's resolve strengthened. He stepped forward and pointed out a crucial part of her method. If I may add, there's also a faster approach to this equation using Liv's insights that might help us visualize the problem clearer. Dr. Markham paused, her brow furrowing slightly. This was territory she hadn't anticipated navigating. Is that so? Please enlighten the class, Barron, she said, her tone almost teasing, but infused with genuine curiosity. Barron took the marker from her and stood beside her at the board. If we apply the ideas from Liv's original papers, we can restructure this whole problem with a more elegant approach. He began scribbling down his solution, his fingers gliding across the board with confidence, explaining each step as he went. You see, he said, drawing diagrams to illustrate complex relationships, when we shift our perspective, suddenly the problem isn't as daunting. It becomes a puzzle to dissect with multiple avenues for discovery. The students leaned closer, their eyes glued to the board, caught up in the exchanges of ideas and revelations. Something beautiful unfolded before them, not just a mathematical solution, but a collaboration of minds. They were witnessing a seminar of intellectual growth. Time slipped away as the students absorbed the knowledge being shared. The camaraderie in the room shifted the air, which crackled with newfound respect for both Barron and Dr. Markham. This was not just a classroom anymore. It was a community of learning. Just then, as the last calculations melted into clarity, a classmate shouted, "Can we apply this to real-life scenarios? Where would we actually use these equations?" The question hung in the air, inviting even more discussion. Barron grinned. Absolutely. Calculus sits at the heart of many systems, from engineering to economics. This is about much more than numbers. It's about understanding patterns and making informed decisions. Dr. Markham nodded in appreciation, her earlier adversarial stance dwindling away with each passing moment. Correct, Barron. That's the beauty of mathematics. It unveils truths about the world around us, regardless of the policies we engage in. With that, the class ventured deeper, exploring applications of calculus that entwined with subjects beyond the classroom walls. Students eagerly engaged in dialogues, sharing their thoughts, igniting an ebullient energy that pushed aside any lingering discomfort from earlier tensions. As the bell rang, signaling the end of the class, an unexpected applause erupted across the room. Students stood, clapping with genuine enthusiasm for the transformation they had just witnessed. It was a celebration of knowledge and unity, a testament to the power of collaboration over confrontation. Dr. Markham, flushed with surprise and humility, turned to Barron with a smile. Thank you for pushing me, Barron. I hadn't realized how caught up I'd become in my ideologies. Barron shrugged modestly. It's about learning together, Professor. We all have room to grow. Indeed, Dr. Markham replied, her voice softer now. This will reshape our curriculum moving forward. I want to foster a space where every voice matters in the pursuit of knowledge. Outside the classroom, the hallways buzzed with students chattering about what had just unfolded. Word spread of Barron's and Dr. Markham's unexpected collaboration, igniting a fervor for their next class. But as the day faded, shadows loomed over the university as rumors about curriculum changes and the rising student engagement reached the ears of influential faculty members. Controversy brewed just beneath the surface, a ripple of concern that had the potential to spiral into chaos. Would Barron's unexpected victory be seen as a threat to the status quo? Little did they know that this revolution in thought and collaboration would trigger unforeseen challenges that would test both Barron's and Dr. Markham's resolve. In their pursuit of knowledge, they had ignited a spark, yet the flames of change often come with trials that require courage to face. As the sun set on that fateful day, the stakes had never been higher. The war for educational integrity was just beginning, and a new battle was brewing, one that would redefine who they were and what they stood for in this hallowed institution. As the week progressed, tension simmered beneath the surface of the university. News of Barron's bold challenge to Dr. Markham spread like wildfire, igniting conversations not only among students but also among faculty. Intrigued by the newfound energy in the classroom, more students began to attend Dr. Markham's lectures, eager to engage in meaningful dialogue. However, not everyone was pleased with this shift. The senior faculty members, especially Dean Richardson, perceived this change as a threat. They had long upheld traditions rooted in hierarchy and established authority. As whispers of possible curriculum reforms circulated, the pressure mounted on Dr. Markham to conform to the status quo. One afternoon, Barron found himself cornered in the library by a group of students curious about his perspective on the recent developments. "Barron," Jenny, a bright but soft-spoken classmate, said, "you've started something big. Have you thought about what might happen next?" Barron leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples thoughtfully. "I've thought about it a lot," he admitted. "But I can't help but feel that if we can embrace this collaboration, it's worth any consequences." Just then, an unexpected figure emerged from the shadows. Dean Richardson. The man's presence was imposing, and he walked toward the group with an air of authority that caused the students to quiet. "I trust you all are enjoying this newfound camaraderie," he said, a hint of sarcasm lacing his words. "Dean Richardson," Barron said, standing up. "We were just discussing how important it is for students to actively engage in their education." "Is that so?" the dean replied, his brow furrowing. "And what if I told you this engagement was causing dissent among our ranks? This isn't what the university's founders envisioned." Barron felt a surge of determination. "But shouldn't higher learning evolve? Students are trying to express their thoughts, and fostering dialogue can only enrich our education." The dean's eyes narrowed, his voice turning icy. "Passion doesn't excuse chaos, Mr. Trump. If you continue to push for these discussions, I may have no choice but to reconsider your position here." A hush fell over the group. Barron's heart raced, but he stood firm, unwilling to yield. "With all due respect, Dean, real learning comes from questioning. Understanding isn't sought through silence." Richardson's lip curled into a snarl. "You tread on dangerous ground. I will not see our educational philosophy compromised by one student's impulsive ideas." As Richardson dismissed himself, questions lingered in Barron's mind. Was he, too, being swept into the tide of change, but this time as an adversary? That evening, unease settled like a heavy fog as Barron pondered the consequences that lay ahead. Days turned into weeks, and the tensions escalated. Dr. Markham found herself caught in the crossfire, pressured by both the students' thirst for change and the faculty's adherence to tradition. The initial enthusiasm among students began to wane. Whispers of backlash hung in the air alongside escalating rumors about disciplinary measures against Barron. One late afternoon, Dr. Markham called an emergency meeting with her students. As they gathered in the familiar classroom, a mix of excitement and anxiety filled the room. "I couldn't let things continue without addressing what's been happening," she said, her voice steady but edged with concern. "We need to confront Dean Richardson directly." Barron raised his hand. "We should prepare ourselves for the possibility that he won't listen. He seems intent on maintaining control." "True," Dr. Markham nodded. "But I believe our passion is our strength. The students deserve a voice, and I am prepared to stand with you." Together, they formulated a plan. They would approach the dean during the next faculty meeting, armed with the results of their discussions and surveys collected from students across various disciplines. They would demand a seat at the table in reforming their education. Word spread quickly of their intention. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement, and students began rallying in support. Posters praising change appeared throughout the university, resonating with the sentiment of many who felt neglected by the traditional system. Dean Richardson, however, had caught wind of their plan and doubled down on his opposition. A tense atmosphere gripped the faculty meeting as Dr. Markham stood before her colleagues, flanked by a determined Barron and a supportive group of fellow students. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are at a crossroads," Dr. Markham began. "The way we teach must reflect the world we live in. Students crave involvement, and they deserve a voice in shaping their education. Our strength lies in dialogue, not dictation." Richardson interrupted with irritation. "If I may remind you, Leonard, our curriculum is based on established principles. This isn't a democracy, it's education." Barron, unable to contain himself, stepped forward. "But education thrives in dialogue. We are not just passive recipients of knowledge. We want to understand, question, and innovate. Eyes darted between Barron and Richardson, both presenting starkly different views. The tension thickened, palpable in the air, a standoff of ideologies hanging in the balance. "This isn't just an educational reform," Dr. Markham stated, her voice unwavering. "This is a movement for empowering the next generation. We've gathered hundreds of student signatures demanding reform. This is their voice." As the tension escalated, Dean Richardson reluctantly acknowledged the weight of their petition. "You might have the numbers, but the question remains. Are you prepared for the fallout of this rebellion?" Barron's heart raced, but he maintained eye contact with the dean. "We're prepared to take responsibility. But it's time for you to recognize the value of what we're fighting for." In that moment, it was as if clouds parted, revealing a glimmer of understanding. The room had shifted. Faculty members exchanged glances, their expressions revealing the question simmering just beneath the surface. Could the traditional model of education coexist with respect for student engagement? With hesitant resolve, Richardson sighed. "I will consider your request, though I cannot promise immediate change." As the meeting adjourned, murmurs filled the air, a mix of disbelief and hope. The struggles had ignited sparks of potential, rattling the established order. Barron's heart filled with both fear and excitement for what lay ahead. This was only the beginning. Outside, the campus buzzed with discussions of possibility. Dr. Markham, pleased with the outcome, turned to Barron. "You led the charge today. Thank you." "I couldn't have done it without your support," Barron replied, a smile breaking across his face. "We're in this together now." With a shared ambition igniting their spirits, they began planning new workshops, forums for discussion that welcomed students from every discipline. Together, they envisioned a vibrant community where thought, creativity, and collaboration flourished. As the semester drew to a close, the university embraced the notion of revolutionizing its approach to education. What once seemed insurmountable had birthed a thriving movement, transforming apprehension into momentum. Yet, as they walked through the campus amidst growing support, Barron couldn't shake the looming question. Would the momentum endure in the face of faculty resistance? But for now, that uncertainty mattered little. They had ignited an essential change. It wasn't just Barron's journey nor Dr. Markham's. It was a unified venture, an academic awakening that called for collaboration, respect, and integrity within education. Together, they had become catalysts for change, proving that questions could spark revolutions. As the sun dipped below the horizon that evening, celebrating their newfound solidarity, the promise of tomorrow shimmered ahead. They stood united, ready to face whatever the future held. Confident that the journey was as vital as the destination, and that learning, when embraced by all, would forever reshape their world.